Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lakers Detailed. I am your host, Vinay, and I'm here with my co host, Raj. Raj, how are you doing this wonderful Saturday evening?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm so happy. I think I told you offline. I was like, man, I really want to keep the picks. I was very
Yeah.
adamant. I was adamant. I was hell bent. I was psychotic almost on like you have to make these selections, and I'm so glad they did. Not only did they do that, they moved up. But no, I'm glad, man. It's a beautiful Saturday, a couple weeks before the summer league. I'm all packed, not packed, but I'm all ready for that mentally. Got the car rented, and all the side stuff you have to do to make the. We're very fortunate, Vinay. We're in Southern California. Getting
Yes.
to Vegas is a 3.5 hour drive. So
Yes.
a drive that I still complain about. I don't know about you, but I still
Well,
end up complaining about. But
I tend to, I usually, because I know I'm going to go well in advance, I always wait for the super cheap $40 flights that go there. And
right,
so
right.
I always fly in to Vegas. But again, that's like a 45-minute flight. So what am I
I,
complaining? There's nothing for me to complain about,
let,
honestly.
let, let me ask you this because this is the first year I actually looked at flights. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, these are pretty affordable. I'm guessing you
Yes.
fly from the Ontario airport.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So we're both in the IE. I fly
Yes.
out of Ontario. Super easy to get in and out of. Uh, Takes 40 minutes to get to Vegas, 40 minutes to get back. There's like 1,000 flights a day out of that airport.
So that $50 flight is safe. I looked at that. I'm like, man, that flight should not be cheaper than my Uber to LAX. Like, there's like that's not that Frontier flight. Like, I looked at it. I'm like, man, that does not look that does not look safe. Does the plane go up in a regular manner? And it it's only an hour, so I'm sure I can't complain too much. I'm just like I look at those flights. I'm like, I don't know.
I can vouch for Frontier. I can vouch for
Okay,
Southwest. I have not taken Spirit, so I can't vouch for them. Every other major airline I've taken, the flights are very safe.
all right.
It's just there's always, I think there's a lot of people who work maybe like between both places, so like the flights are pretty common.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like
Mm-hmm.
there's always flights out there. So I would highly encourage folks, especially with the cost of gas nowadays, if you can fly, fly. If you're flying out
Yeah.
of Southern California, at least. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to it. It's out, obviously with Victor. It supposedly looks like Victor Wembanyama is going to also be playing in summer league too. So we're
Mhm.
hoping that we get a couple of games. The Laker game for the first day on July 7th is the last game of the day. So I know it's like an eight o'clock at night game. So I'm
Mhm.
fully expecting it to be like very raucous, very hyped. So I'm just excited for it. I'm excited to see, just exactly like you said. We kept the picks. We didn't trade them. We got a kid in the second round who we'll talk about, like, who
Yep.
looks like a phenomenal player. I'm very excited to see him. We also got two guys on two-way contracts that look like they can be impact guys. One of them happens to be Austin Reeves, rep by Austin Reeves' agent, and we know how
Yep.
that experience has gone so far. It's been really great. So it's a lot to look forward to.
Yep.
But before we get into that, uh, there was a lot of stuff that was going on beforehand. Like the week of the draft, or this week,
Mhm.
basically earlier this week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, there was a lot of speculation that the Lakers were going to move the pick, and a
Mhm.
lot of well-sourced writers were saying that. And we did a pod on it. We
Yeah.
covered some trade scenarios. There was discussions about Dorian Finney-Smith, Royce O'Neal, the good old Miles Turner and Buddy Hield options too as
Mhm.
well. And there were players that were floated around, and there really no trade kind of really seemed to be getting close. But right prior to the trade, the Lakers made a move, or sorry, to the draft, the Lakers made a move. They trade with Denver, I believe. Uh, they trade and send some cash, and no, sorry, not Denver, Indiana. Uh,
Indiana. Mhm.
they moved from the 47th pick to the 40th pick, and it's awesome to see Lakers Twitter. Like, any kind of small thing gets like a level of buzz where it's like this could be monumental. And it was very
Mhm.
cool to see, like, people, just all we did was move up 7 spots in the second round, and everybody's just like, who are we gonna grab? Like, this guy's
Right.
gonna be the guy. Like, they wouldn't move up and spend this kind of money if it was gonna happen. What were your thoughts, like, when they made that
Yeah.
when you saw that news?
again, like I was just saying, I really wanted them to make selections in the draft, and then moving up 7 spots told me that they had someone they liked, obviously there, or they thought would be in that kind of 40 range, right? I think they kind of tier the players in terms of who they like more. But no, I was excited, man. They paid a hefty price. I think it was like $4 million in change to move up 7 spots. I think that's also the max that you can pay for a
Yes.
draft pick in terms of the CBA or something. But no, I was excited. They made the when it was getting closer to 17, you heard kind of the rumors continue to speculate like, oh, they may move it, they may move down. But Vinay, I mean, I'm sure you'll give more info in terms of like what you heard and stuff like that. But I just don't think there was a deal available. Like I think we went through the options too, right? We were going through the back and forth, and you were asking me. We were playing the flip that contract game, and I was
Yes.
saying, and you were going through the names, and there was just very few that I thought were worth it, that were that made it worth it to drop whatever spots it would be. So I'm really glad that they took the player. Now that doesn't mean this player will 100% stay with the team, but usually draft picks lose their value instantly by the time that they're picked.
Yep.
After they're picked, their value drops immensely because a team would like to choose the player at that spot. So I'm excited. I'm really glad. And even selfishly, like for Summer League, I told you this before, like for Summer League, we get a few players that have some
Proved.
name recognition, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure the undrafted guys, we can get into those later too, but just to get two guys who have some name recognition, that have some like equity on the board in terms of like what other mock drafts have them higher or whatever. It's just nice to go into Summer League with something really exciting. And I think these are two guys, we'll get into them, that can contribute pretty soon here.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so there was behind, from what I've been hearing behind the scenes, there were a few deals that the Lakers were potentially being rumored to be part of.
Mm-hmm.
One of the ones which was actually largely publicized was that Porzingis trade, right? So the Porzingis trade that landed him in Boston, it was supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be the Clippers that were supposed to send Marcus Morris
Right.
to the expiring contract, and then Malcolm Brogdon was supposed to go to um,
The
Malcolm
Clippers.
Brogdon was supposed to go to the Clippers. So the funny part about that is that there was a discussion that I was having with somebody about that, because we didn't know who the third team was going to be. So we were trying to speculate as to who the third team was. And I was like, oh, I wonder if the Lakers would be one of the teams that were interested, because the intel that I had been given was that the player that Boston was trying to trade at the time was Brogdon. So I was just
Right.
like, I wonder if the Lakers would send Malik Beasley to Washington and then take on Brogdon. Like, you would think it's taboo that the Lakers would even make a deal with Boston, but it's really Boston wants Porzingis, so they don't really care. And I was like, well, if you get Malcolm Brogdon, he's kind of a pretty. He's not as healthy as you'd like him to be, but
Mm-hmm.
just won Sixth Man of the Year, I think. Very
Definitely
capable
upgrade
guard.
over Malik
Yeah,
Beasley
he's been a
for sure.
starter. He played in that Buck system before he went to Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I wonder if the Lakers were one of those LA teams, and the Clippers were the rumored team that sent Marcus Morris, and then the trade fell apart because of Malcolm Brogdon's injury. Now, what I had heard is after that trade fell apart, there was a call placed to the Celtics with some interest from our team about taking on Malcolm Brogdon. But the
Mm.
problem is that his elbow might be French fries. Like, his elbow might be completely deep fried. And so the
Yeah.
Lakers were also afraid of his medical situation, because they can't, you can't. Granted, you're trading, a guy that you're probably going to cut, but you just can't risk
Mm-hmm.
it, having that on there. But there was some murmurings, there was some conversation about the Lakers possibly inserting themselves in after the Clippers bowed out.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that trade ends up being completely different. Marcus Smart gets traded to the Memphis Grizzlies. Grizzlies trade Tyus Jones, and then Boston gets away with 2 first rounders in the process, which was,
Mm-hmm.
I was playing basketball at the time. I was like, I went back to my phone and I like sat down. I was like, what is going on? How did these guys get 2 first round picks? And
Yeah.
they got the best player, I would say, in the trade. And they got 2 first rounders out of it. Like, I was shocked. It was a pretty good trade for Boston.
Yeah, so the first round picks, I think were the story, but I mean, if you take a little closer look, I think they're really late first,
Yeah.
something like that, right? Yeah, it was shocking. First of all, think about it from Marcus Smart's perspective, where like a Brogdon failed physical or whatever is the reason that he gets shipped out. So I'm sure
Yeah.
like he was ready to move forward with the team. Reminds me a little bit of that like Chris Paul deal where like that was done, and now like you have to go back, right? Marcus Morris can't go back to the Clippers now.
Yeah,
thing. I don't know if
they have to be
Boston.
shopping him. Yeah,
I don't think Boston can like keep Malcolm Brogdon. That they're saying that with a public face. I think it's so interesting. They got the best player in the deal. I guess they did from like just in terms of a talent standpoint. I don't trust Porzingis to stay healthy. I don't think he's getting an extension. I trust Marcus Smart to be awesome in Memphis. I think that's exactly, what they, I think that's exactly what they needed. He's the Brooks replacement. He just takes way less volume shots. I think like he's a leader on that team. I like that deal for Memphis. I think getting that for Tyus Jones is nice. Boston, I think it's interesting, man. I think I know heart of the team and stuff that you can't really tell in terms of stats or whatever.
sure.
That's a tough thing to kind of identify. But I do think Smart was important for them, and trading that out for Porzingis reminded me a little bit of like the Lakers losing Lamar Odom. Like that was a
Sure.
talent that got out of the league, that got sent away, but it wasn't just a talent. You talk around all those players around that team, it's like Lamar Odom was the heart, right? Lamar Odom was the guy that kept everyone together. You hear that same kind of verbiage with Marcus Smart on that team. He's the only guy that like when Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown decide to ISO 3 million times, he's the only guy that goes up and like, hey, let's move the ball a little bit. Let's get some motion in. Now that guy's shipped off, so I'm interested to see what they do. Again, Porzingis is a hell of a talent. I think he's more of like a pick and pop big than people
Yeah.
realize. He's a guy that wants to shoot a 40-footer over like a contested 15-footer. I think that's like the gap in his game, but he's going to help their spacing. I think Boston's still going to be good. I don't think it's as much of a home run as I'm seeing. What do you think? How do you see that fit?
Yeah, a part of it's kind of strange. Like I understand. Well, I mean, I want to understand what it is. Like, so one of the things I will say is him going to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might utilize him. I don't think they're going to unearth some new version of him. I think they're just going to
Mm-hmm.
try and maximize kind of what he's good at and minimize what he's not good at. The real question is like, well, you traded Marcus Smart. He's not really a pick and roll ball handler. And you got Porzingis, who's going to be like a pick and pop partner. But what are you going to
Mm-hmm.
run pick and roll? Are you going to have him run pick and pops with Jason Tatum, like Jaylen
Yep.
Brown? Who is he running it with? That's going to do that, like make you guys, take you guys to the next level. Like if you pair him with a guy who's like an extraordinary rim attacker, then that would make a ton of sense to me because now you have that inside outside balance when you run those actions. So I'm not quite sure like what they're like. They still have Robert Williams. They still have Al Horford. They have Grant Williams. Like I don't know. Like Boston feels like a team that keeps getting very, very close to the end. But sometimes their stars just don't. Like the Game 7. Like Jaylen Brown has a terrible Game 7. Like you just lose those games because you had a really bad game. But you don't want to overreact too much a certain way. So I'm really curious, why they went in this direction and what else. It feels like there has to be some other moves coming. Like it can't just be this. I'd be shocked if it's just this.
I think part of it is just like doing something to do something. You know what I mean? Like you kind of need a change and like I'm just looking at it from like the outside view, right? Obviously Boston lives in its own universe and they probably hear the hey, you won a championship. But I mean, look at Tatum and Brown's age. I mean, they're kind of in line with where people, not to give Boston any credit here, but just like when you talk about like how young players, and I feels like they just broke up a team that's been pretty good that made the finals, the year before. They went down 3-0 to the Miami Heat, and that was kind of the end of them, but they, won three in a row to make that series tied. I just like, this feels like a move to do something, just to do something. I'm interested to see how that works. Porzingis has a 1-year deal left. I don't think they're going to extend him. I don't know. I think it's an interesting basketball fit. It's also a bet on Derek White to me, right? I think Derek White was really good. He was basically closing games for them. And now they take away Marcus Smart's like, I think Marcus Smart was like the best passer on that team. I mean, if you just look at like guys who can make plays, he was kind of the one that was making like the hockey assists and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm interested to see the basketball fit for them. I think Porzingis just changes fundamentally who you are, right? Like I think that changes what they are. And to me, you just talked about it, how, they've gotten close so many times. I think it kind of kills your morale in terms of your belief of the team. And so now they've completely gone a different direction. So I'm interested to see how that looks. But and then Jaylen Brown's extension too coming this summer, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been just a cost cutting move. Who knows? They may have just been trying to get out of a big enough salary to like not be too far into the tax. There is a part of this trade that I do want to discuss, which is I think is like it's just it's not a rant, but I just want to mention this because I had read a lot of people in my mentions after I tweeted this. So Tyus Jones got traded to Washington, and Washington is
Hmm.
basically tearing it down. Tyus is one of the best backup point guards in the league, and like assist to turnover ratio. If you watch him, he's a very safe player. He makes very safe plays. Doesn't do risky stuff. Has a nice floater, all that sort of stuff. So I sort of tweeted out at the time. I tweeted out. I was just like, Lakers should be calling about Tyus Jones because
Hmm.
if the Wizards are just selling off parts for second round picks, I'm sure we can scrounge up a second round, a really a slightly useful second round pick to send. And I
Yeah.
got a lot of like messages like, "Did you see us play him off the floor? What did he do against us? In the playoffs?" And I was just sitting there. I was just like, I get it. Like I understand. Like oh, he's a midget. We don't want any more midgets on the
Small
roster.
guard.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, like I get it, but we still like. I just want to take a step back for a second. Like I think folks need to understand we need to play 82 games before we get
Right.
into the playoffs. Like I understand that every trade that we make, you're thinking about the playoffs, and I agree. We are thinking about the playoffs, but we have to
Hmm.
also get there. And if I can get a
Sure.
guy who can spell LeBron James enough regular season minutes or allow the Lakers to win enough games when LeBron isn't playing or Anthony Davis isn't playing so that they're completely fresh in the playoffs, I'm okay with trading a player like that. Like I'm like as much as I would like to be able to grab as many 82 game and 16 game players that there are around the league, those guys are very expensive and very hard to come by. And whether Tyus is a 16 game player or not, he definitely is an 82 game player. And we
Sure.
definitely need somebody like that. So, like, Lakers have had some issues with like backup point guards. And obviously with the draft, we may have addressed some of that too. But it's just like there's been like a lot of pushback on any trade that we do, or like any trade I've seen. Like I always see in every comment when even somebody else
Yeah.
on like Jovan or some writer mentions it, like every response to it's like, oh, he's gonna get played off the floor. He's gonna play. Dude, the entire team got played off the floor in the Western Conference Finals. You know what I mean? Like we
Right.
got
Right.
swept. You know what I mean? So it's like I'm not saying we have to like take whatever comes to us, but it's like this guy can be very clearly productive in his role and help us survive 80 games, 82 games. And really what we need is just to keep winning when our one of our two
Y-
stars is unavailable. So as long as
Yeah.
and if we're trading a guy like Michael Beasley for Tyus
Hmm.
Jones, you're getting a guy you can use for a guy that you don't want to use. And so that
Yeah.
what do you think about that? Like, have you been seeing that, or am I crazy? Am I thinking too hard
No,
on
no,
it?
no. So what I've seen is like, well, can they play against Denver? I'm like, well, that's the that's like the that's that's the
Very
amount of guys.
specific,
Yeah, no. So like, because obviously that's the most recent, right?
right?
So that's what's in everybody's mind, and I get it. Like, I understand. Denver series um, is very like enlightening, right? It
Yep.
highlights because the basketball level is so high that any kind of weakness is going to be picked on and shown to the forefront. But you're right. I think that's the wrong way to kind of look at it. Tyus Jones would be incredible. Michael Winger, I think, has been told, burn it down and don't leave any, don't leave
Bro,
any
there,
marks from the
yeah,
last, from the last regime. Just burn it all down. Which, credit to them. I think that's also like the easiest GM job to do. Be
yeah,
like, oh, I can just sell off parts. I can just go to
yeah.
anybody and be like, hey, just take this. Yeah, like I've seen that as well. It's why like I think I've seen pushback like. You can't just let Beasley go. Like I've seen just release Malik Beasley. I mean, that's a wrong.
Right.
That's such a
Why?
like
I mean, if
that's just
you're
a
not gonna play him, just don't waive him. Just don't play him. Like it's okay.
also like I think expiring contracts, in my opinion, are way more valuable at the trade deadline than now. I feel like if you're not
Yeah,
attaching a first round pick to it, they also have way less salary that's guaranteed right by the deadline. Like if you have an expiring as in my opinion a lot more value at that time than right now. But like Malik Beasley, I think is a guy that can help you in a regular season context, like get you
sure.
through just like you talked about, get you through an 82 game season. His gravity, I think, has more pull during the regular season as well, right? Like you miss a few shots, teams don't adjust to you as quickly, and yada yada. Tyus Jones is a huge upgrade from that, and I think he's a guy that Washington should like. I think they need NBA players on that roster, like at
Fair.
least
Yeah.
a few. So we'll see. Maybe they just hand the keys to Jordan Poole and say, hit as
Yeah.
many hit as many cross curb sides as you want. Like just you can
He's
bend. You
yeah, dude.
can
He's gonna be. It's a good segue because I was
yeah.
literally just gonna talk about the move that they did make, and we were gonna talk about
Oh
So
yes, I'm here for
Washington flips
that.
Chris Paul to the Warriors for Jordan Poole, and I think a couple I think a first round pick, or I forgot what it was,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the Warriors sent back. That was the other big trade that sort of happened. Uh, Jordan Poole is probably going to be like a top 8 score, points per game scorer next
Sure.
season. His job is going to be to go in and do as much entertaining stuff as he possibly can do and make shots for them. And he's going to, I don't know if he's going to be an efficient 30, but he's going to aim for 30 a night and
Before
shoot as much as he
before we get
wants
to
to.
the basketball part of it, I just want to
Yeah.
ask you: do they sell super low on Jordan Poole? I get it. I feel like so the title bought Jordan Poole 1 year of benefit of the doubt, and obviously the
Yeah.
punch accelerated. I'm not gonna say timelines, but accelerated decisions that had to be made. Right. It's a funny clip that's going around with Draymond being like, I don't really like Chris Paul. It's like this. But no, the Jordan Poole part is fascinating to me. He's like 23,
Yeah.
24. Obviously not on a great contract, but it's also not like they didn't super max him. It's like a 28 million dollar contract, I think, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. That's a really low sell to trade for a guy who's again hurt, that got sold off by a team that needs to win now. I think that's fascinating. But the Jordan Poole part of it, let me ask you that. Do you think they sold low, or is this kind of what Jordan Poole's contract is, and it's good to get off of that?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, like in terms of saving money this season, trading
Yeah.
Jordan Poole didn't save the Warriors any money because Chris Paul's making more than Jordan Poole is. At least this season he is. Obviously they get out of his long term
Mm,
salary. But, another part of it is also like for me, when I think about it,
mhm.
is, I know I'm not going to pretend like I watch a ton of Warrior games. I don't. But I
We got a close up
know,
look though. I mean, you play a
yeah,
team in a series. I feel like you get a pretty firsthand look at what they are.
yeah. And for me, it's like I always thought that Poole, especially last season, when
Mm.
Steph would go out, Poole would come in and they wouldn't like miss a beat scoring wise. And I was just like, dude, this kid is gonna make this kid like just because he doesn't play like Steph, but he has he's very smart, very crafty, knows how to use the same screens. He likes to pull up off the threes. He's deadly from range when especially when he's hot.
Yep.
He's deadly from range. Like I was just like, this kid's gonna like extend their dynasty by forever. And obviously they won a championship 2 seasons ago,
Yeah.
and he was an integral part of that for one of the games that he was in. And I don't know what's going on with that organization. Obviously Bob Myers is gone. There's also some speculation that I've seen that Draymond may not be, he may take a bigger deal somewhere else. I've heard behind the scenes that the number that he wants is a number that's not even close to what the Warriors want to give him. So there's like a
Sure.
real chance that they may lose him. And that might be why they made the Chris Paul trade, because they need another playmaking player, high IQ playmaker on that team. But I'm with you, dude. Like 1 year, like okay, let me put it this way: you traded Jordan Poole, right? If Draymond goes to another team, he signs a free agent deal with another team, you basically lost two guys when you
Oh,
should
that's
have
disaster.
you should have kept one of them, right? You like if you thought you were going to lose Draymond, or you expected to lose Draymond, then you lose him, but at least you still have Jordan Poole. So like the locker chemistry and all that stuff is weird, but I don't know. Maybe the whole punching incident. There's been a lot of on our timeline.
Yeah.
NBA fans have turned into like police surveillance now, dude. Apparently, so like they're recording, what his interactions are with his bench mates and stuff like that, and it doesn't
Oh,
look like
right,
it's
right.
been good. So maybe the bridge had already been burned,
Yeah,
long
yeah.
before it. So, but yeah,
Maybe
it's tough, man. He just helped you win a championship. That's really tough.
he was he killed Denver in that first
Yeah,
round series. We forget now because it's so long ago. Denver obviously was missing Jamal Murray, Michael Porter
yeah,
Jr., all that stuff. But still, that dude was like, I think he was like 20 something a game. I think he had like 30 in his first playoff game. I think that's tough for Chris Paul to me. Like that's the one you got, like, you know what I mean? Like you could sell it if, let's say, I got another young player back, or I even got picks back, right? But it's a salary dump for
yeah,
Chris Paul on a team like this. Fit makes let's get into that because
yeah,
Jordan Poole is gonna shake 30 shots in Washington, blow your head off, dude. Like go crazy, like go,
yeah.
go have fun. Chris Paul to the Warriors, it's just like, it's a guy that I thought was gonna be bought out. Like and I thought the
100%.
clip.
I
If
thought so
not,
too.
I thought the Clippers would maybe give some deals of guys like, Robert Covington, who Ty Lue for some reason has a vendetta against, and then Marcus Morris, who Clipper fans obviously, would have given away for free. I thought like that'd be the contracts to like, okay, let's get Chris Paul. Maybe they get a second round or first round or whatever. No, you give up, your most like Jordan Poole got a max deal this last summer. Like this was like this is a
Yeah.
summer ago. So I'm just like the basketball fit to me is so fascinating. They're saying like, yeah, Chris Paul can run their second unit. Have you met Chris Paul? Like what
Yeah, it's he plays at a completely different pace than what that team wants to play at. He plays much slower, much more methodical. Even when Draymond's playing like that point forward role, like he's
Mhm.
pushing the ball up the court, getting like yelling at his guys to run with him so he can set up open shooters. So I'm
Sure.
very curious to see. I wouldn't be surprised if Chris Paul does get moved one more time. Like some of it
Ugh.
makes me that trade, some of it makes me feel like they had to use a first to get off of. So it was a salary dump. The cost of the salary dump was to give up a first or whatever they gave up to get Chris Paul. And then I think they're going to try and move Chris Paul for maybe to get like break him up into pieces. Chris Paul doesn't care because he just wants to not get his contract waived. He doesn't want to get waived and have to start begging for a contract from
You don't
whichever
think
team
he's
picks
trying to
him up.
win? You don't think Chris Paul's trying to win?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's trying to win, but it's like, dude, it's like you can't make it. Like he can't make it to the end of his season. That's the issue. Like
But see,
he's
but
also super old.
we all know that. Like that's
Yeah.
something that's known. That's why, like, to me, the Warriors trading for another player that is kind of breaking down
Yeah.
when they need. Like the whole conversation around the Warriors, like, hey, they die when Steph sits. When
Yeah.
Steph sits, like they're
Yeah.
dead. Yeah, it's trade for a guy who's not a regular season, like who
Mhm.
you should not be giving a ton of burden to in the regular season. It reminds me a little bit. It's not the exact same, but a little bit of like do you remember the conversation when we got Russ? Right, it was like, yeah, Russ is gonna run the non-LeBron
Yeah.
minutes. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna have Russell Westbrook running second units, and obviously there were more to this, but sounds the similar conversations I'm thinking about Chris Paul. It's like, yeah, when Steph is off the floor, we're gonna run a pick and roll, slow offense. I'm like, Steph plays like 36 minutes a game. Like those
Yeah.
guys are gonna have to coexist. He's gonna set up Klay Thompson, I think, but I just think bringing another guy where like Chris Paul again in that series was dare to be a shooter, and just the age and the injury history, like to me that the trade makes no sense along with the basketball fit. Like if the basketball fit made sense and there was like some injury concerns, I would understand. When you have both, I'm lost in terms of the sense for this.
Yeah, the pace is the biggest thing because I think that's been like the largest issue for Phoenix. We
Mm-hmm.
discussed him if the Lakers signed him off of a
Mm-hmm.
buyout. How I jokingly said, I mean it was half joke, but like he does kind of play at the pace that Anthony Davis and LeBron want to play. Like I know that the Lakers are one of the highest paced teams in the league, but that's also largely because of we would just have guys that just ran off of every miss, and one or two of our players would hang back. It's not like all five guys were running down the floor every single time. That happens in basketball quite a bit. And like I don't see how it makes sense. The other thing is that they get smaller. Like you're now like in
Yeah.
crunch times you're gonna play Chris Paul. Like they may not, but you're gonna play Chris Paul, Steph, Clay, Wiggins, and Draymond. If you bring Draymond back,
Oof.
that's kind of a small lineup. And Chris
Yeah.
Paul is not the guy. He's not the defensive guy that he was before. He takes silly fouls sometimes. He does flopping stuff that results in turnovers, especially if he doesn't get calls. Again, like you're taking a guy who doesn't really play in like that flex motion offense that these guys like to run, and with all the split cutting and all that sort of stuff. And so it's like, okay, and then if you have Chris Paul and he's the one who's running the offense, what is Draymond doing? Like nobody's playing off of, like nobody's sticking to Draymond, so that's not going to be.
Right.
So it's weird, Obviously, these questions may get answered. We'll find out what happens if they make any other moves. It's such a bizarre thing, a really bizarre trade. Good for Jordan Poole. Good for all the guys that are going to go to the Wizards and stack up their stats because they're going to look really good there. The other news, not that it's really basketball related, but another thing, the Qatari investment fund, the first.
Right.
This is not a big deal right now, but for folks that have been paying attention to the foreign investments that some of these companies or these countries are making into these teams, they bought a minority stake. I thought it was so funny that news broke in between the two trades, like because they
Right.
did the Chris Paul trade, that news dropped, and then they did the update of how many picks the Brad Beal trade resulted in. I thought that was hilarious because I was like, dude, these guys have crazy money, like the Qataris do, and obviously the UAE and Saudis. You know, they've invested in
Right.
soccer. Messi's been being offered crazy contracts. Ronaldo's been offered crazy contracts for the folks that are into soccer and sort of that stuff. So they've got like endless pockets. And I thought
Yep.
it was fascinating to hear that this was the first time that a company from there invested into a U.S. NBA team. And
Yeah.
I remember I told you this offline. A lot of NBA fans are tweeting at CJ McCollum that he boned the NBA players
The
union,
CBA. Mm-hmm.
yeah, with his negotiations. Which I mean, to some degree, I understand the middle class probably got squeezed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that CBA was about like
Yep.
the lower class billionaires versus the upper class billionaires, and a lot of the CBA language when it comes to the second apron has to do with that. And obviously that affects the Clippers, that affects the Warriors. We're seeing the impact of it now.
Mm-hmm.
But a part of it also makes me think that these NBA owners knew that there's going to be some foreign investing going on with a lot of these franchises, and some of these guys are not going to be able to keep up. If
Mm-hmm.
a minority owner eventually becomes a majority owner and decides to buy them out, like the Wizards are only valued at like $4 billion. Like they could most likely just come in and pay them straight cash if they wanted to buy the whole team. And obviously, this is the business side. This is not the basketball side. But I
Sure.
think the NBA, as it becomes more and more global, it'll be fascinating to see if these sort of foreign investments happen, because now the level of play and the level of willingness to spend money and pay tax and all that sort of stuff
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
will be very interesting. So, the CBA obviously was a big deal between the players and the owners, but there's a level of it that has to do with like the cash rich owners and the cash poor owners, and it'll
Yeah.
be interesting to see what happens.
But
But look, man,
is it?
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I think they're gonna be very careful which investments they allow in as well, right? The league is,
Oh yeah,
will be very attentive to what investments are coming in, and basically that second apron was just for that, right? Is to
yeah,
keep these type of these HBO owners from coming in and to like middle finger to your cap, right? Like I
yeah,
don't care. That's basically what he did.
yeah,
And I think I said this the last pod, but like these dudes don't care. Like
yeah,
these dudes who get their money from places that's not basketball, it's very, they can just come in, have fun with it, screw the team for 8 years. Doesn't work, just sell it for,
yeah.
a crazy value. So I think you see Matt Ishbia do this, and I think you see this with new ownership, right? That's the new ownership theory where they come in and just makes a massive kind of
Yeah.
overhaul deal. You just saw that with the Suns. I'm sure you'll see that in other places, but
So we saw it
yeah,
with the Wolves
Wolves
and
as
the
well,
Go.
right? Yeah, with the Gobert deal, which is again awful that they'll deal with later. But yeah, like yeah, that that money that came in, it was kind of it went on under the radar. But I think that's what the second apron kind of is for. I
Yeah,
also think Vinay, you can't buy a title. Like I
very true.
firmly believe that in my heart of hearts. Maybe you can, like maybe the Miami Heat in 2000, I'm losing track, 2012. Those guys took less money, so I don't know if
Yeah,
that.
to be fair, the players took pay cuts, so
Okay,
yeah,
but I mean, you think if Steve Ballmer couldn't write a check for a title, you wouldn't do that tomorrow?
yeah,
Steve
for
Ballmer
sure.
would write a check tomorrow if that meant Kawhi and PG played 60 games. Doesn't work. It just basketball. There's a lot more nuances. It's why we're here conversating about it. It's why it's interesting. I don't believe you can just write a blank check and win. The Memphis Grizzlies owner, I think, has the most money in the league as well. If you
Yeah,
remember, they
he's
have
one
a
of the
new
richest
ownership
owners
group
in the
as well.
league. Yeah,
He's one of the richest people in the world. Like he's
yeah,
not, forget the NBA,
very true.
and he can't get his team to so I think and my point with that is like, yes, the new money is a big deal. I also think like the NBA is still a place where you have to have nuance. You have to have the guys that understand talent, that understand drafting, can't just go out and write a blank check and win. So hopefully maybe I'm just looking at the bright side. I'm just because we're
Yeah,
one of the ownership groups that don't
small market Lakers are the
yes,
small market Lakers. We're just a mom and pop organization, father daughter organization that just kind of making our way, trying
making
to win championships here and there.
picking the lemons out of the tree and making the
Yeah,
lemonade by hand.
we
That's
find
what
we're
we're
finding these kids from Oklahoma, and they're undrafted, and they're
yeah.
we're getting we're just trying to make our way and be a competitive team.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff happened. There's a lot of
Mhm.
pre-draft speculation on the Lakers side. Then on the day of, outside of moving up to the second, moving up in the second round, there was obviously they fully consummated the Bradley Beal trade. The Porzingis trade happens. The Chris Paul trade happens, and it's largely quiet from then on. You
Yep.
see a bunch of teams moving guys around, or not moving guys, but like moving picks around, really on the day of. But nothing, no extraordinary other trades or anything like that happened.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot of speculation at the time. We'd be remiss because this is like literally a daily conversation, whether Dame is going to be with the team or not, or whether he is unhappy. Obviously, now there's like this weird thing going on where he's like acting like he doesn't want to leave, and he's happy that he's there, even though that's literally like apparently we don't have eyes and ears and brains to translate what he's been saying, the past couple of weeks. So not too much drama, but it's interesting. But the drama really comes, at least on the Lakers side, as to whether we were going to trade that pick. And I don't know if you're watching the draft live, but like they cut to commercial break before the Lakers pick. And it's just like, I remember I was sitting there and I was just like, dude, the 5 minutes has to be up. There's no way that this is taking this long for us to come back to it. I was like, bro, I wonder if they're on the phone with somebody trying to make a trade. And then obviously they make the announcement that the Lakers pick is in and the Lakers make their pick. What was going through your mind? Like the 5 minutes, like did you notice, first and foremost, did you notice like it
100%.
felt like there's a weird delay with the game when it came to that pick, or with the draft when it came to that pick?
Oh yeah, for sure. First of all, those 5 minutes took forever. It felt like every pick going up to the Lakers one. And the talk around the draft was that the teams were looking for who dropped, right? Kind of like they want to see if their player would drop, and then you have to make a deal within that kind of time frame. It's a tough place to negotiate from, like when you have 5 minutes to negotiate a deal. So like once it got past like 14 or 13, I was like, we're keeping this pick. Like I don't think a deal is happening now. It just feels like we're gonna keep the pick. But I was excited, man. It did take a long time. I'm sure Rob was taking phone calls. I don't know if you saw the video, but I thought it was cool that like he thanked like Jesse right away. He's like, congrats, man. Told Jesse like congrats. So it looks like that's a Jesse Buss pick. And maybe that's just what Rob wanted it to look like. But I was really glad. How about you? Well,
yeah, no, I was glad. Obviously my only like caveat for trading the pick was like just get back and impact guys like that we can use if you're going to trade the pick. But I'd like to keep the pick. We don't know. Not that is wrong. I understand like the sentiment of folks saying that you have to go all in for LeBron and AD because you don't know whether they're going to be there. But I also understand the sentiment of people saying, look, if you can find a guy that, eventually develops into a starting caliber player for your team beyond, on a rookie scale salary that can help us now and, turn into something a little bit later. I like that too. And, for a team, for fans, you and I, that we hate the turnover. We'd like some sort of consistency. We'd like to actually see some young players on this roster. And obviously we saw, last season, Bron's health is up and down, AD's health is up and down. Like the thing that actually does work in our favor is when we have young bodies, athletic bodies that play the game in the modern style of basketball, up and down, transition, shooting threes, getting to the rim, that sort of thing. So we drafted a guy like that. We drafted a guy who fits that mold, and I'm glad that we got him. And I don't know if we're going to have him, if he's going to be on this roster at the start of the season, or if he's going to finish the whole season with us, or what ends up happening. But he's a good prospect. I like him a lot. And he checks off. Like on some of the stuff that we wanted. We wanted a good sized player, which he's 6'5", 6'6", probably in shoes.
6'6",
strong body, good playmaking skills. And we're talking about Jalen. We got a guy that makes sense. He fits with what we want out of the team, and somebody that we can develop further. And as I mentioned, he was coached. His AAU coach was Coach Richard Jackson, who's a mutual friend of both of ours. So congrats to him. Congrats to Team Thad, AAU basketball team. I think they're out in Georgia. They got one of their kids on the Lakers, and so I'm happy for him, and I'm happy for the Lakers.
Yeah, out of Indiana, Jalen Hood-Schifino. Really nice point guard, 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. I don't really follow the draft, and I don't think you don't really follow college basketball as Mel. I just love when the hat is picked, the name gets decided, and I can just dive into all the film. College basketball is weird; it's hard to find like full games of stuff, so you can really kind of find clips and stuff here. But No, he's fun, man. He looks like a very mature 20-year-old.
Mhm.
I believe both Maxwell and Jalen are both 20 years old. But you watch Hood Schifino, looks a little bit more mature. Looks like his game is a little bit more refined. He looks like a pro, and he's talked about this, that like he knows that he wanted to be pro for a very long time. His body kind of he's been working as like his physical and his body and his like nutrition for a very long time. But I guess I want to start here. I'll ask you this. To me, like his most NBA skill is like a pick and roll guard, right? I think
Mhm.
like pick and roll guard and a like defensive guard as well. I think he's very physical. I think so. People have called him like not athletic. I'm not sure I agree with, like, I get the sentiment of like he's not a vertical athlete, but he's super
Sure.
physical, right? Like if you're not athletic, you have to at least be physical. I think like those are two things that like our guards kind of had a trouble with last
Yeah.
season, where they were not only not athletic, they were also not physical. And like that's a
Yes.
really tough combination to have. And I love that we went with a guard that's extremely physical. Guys pressure him and he welcomes that. He'll get you on his back and he likes to shoot with a little bit of contact. He can hit the mid-range shot. But for you, do you agree with that? Like that's his NBA kind of ready skill right now, is like pick and roll guard,
Yes.
can get to a spot. Obviously not a 3-point shooter yet. The form to me looks real. I don't know what you think. But like, do you think next year that's where he contributes?
Yeah, so I think like his immediate impact. I feel like like Joey and Jesse have been pretty consistent when they grab these guards. Like
Mm,
you're either getting like these super skilled, like an Austin Reeves type, like very
yep.
skilled offensively, but very scrappy defensively, or they go the Max Christie route where they get a guy who's a little bit more raw offensively, but is like
Yeah.
really sound. Like his um. So Shafino has Jalen has really nice defensive technical skills,
Yeah.
and that's something that I remember you and I both said. I said we said this about Christie. We said Max has really good technical skills defensively, and that's actually something that I think NBA fans don't respect. Like the big name guys, the Drew Holidays, the Kawhi Leonards, like those are the guys that you'll hear it about. But like a lot of defense is something in the NBA that like people are trying to. The analytics guys are trying to
Trying to
apply a
quantify.
metric to
Mhm.
catch all of it. But they're so like I always like to say that everything that you think, the laundry list of different things that you could say about an offensive player's bag, there's a defensive bag that defensive players have. And, like when I watched Max, and I remember I was watching Max in Vegas, Summer League.
Mhm.
And I was just like, this kid has, like, you could see the way he plays, the way he moves, the way he reacts. He has a good foundation of defensive technical skills. And so when I watch Jalen, I feel the same way.
Mhm.
And I think the way you summed it up is right. I don't think the people that are saying that he's not athletic are wrong, and I don't think you're wrong either. I think your context is like apropos. Like he's not an explosive athlete, but he's a
Right.
physical athlete, right? So like think about the guys around the league that are not explosive defensive or offensive players, but they're physical players, right? So you think of guys like a guy that we just talked about, Malcolm Brogdon, very
Mhm.
physical defender. He will play you chest to chest. He has no issues playing it that way. Drew Holiday. I'm not saying that Jalen's gonna be these guys. I'm just saying that it
Sure.
gives you an idea. Drew's not a super explosive athlete. He's a guy who's very physical with you on both ends if he has to be, whether he's posting you up, navigating a pick and roll, trying to bully his way to the rim or get a floater off or whatever it is. So, like, there's like I agree with you. I think a lot of his impact we'll probably see in pick and roll defensively, pick and roll offensively, because he's a big guard like Austin. Like, he
Yeah.
won't be affected by the physicality of defensive guys. When he uses a screen, he won't have to worry about getting blocked from behind as much as
Mhm.
somebody, as a guy like Dennis Schroeder probably would. And so like stuff like that is always helpful. And physicality on the wings is the way you win NBA championships. So
Mhm.
I like the pick a lot.
Yeah, again, like physical guard. It reminds me of, and again, these are like the top 1%
Yeah.
outcomes here, right? Like if he hits, even if he's a rotation player, you've done your job. Reminds me a little bit like Darren Williams, like kind of like
Yeah.
how he plays, very physical. Darren Williams would dunk on you sometimes, but he's not like a major crazy athlete. Not doesn't really live in the air kind of guy. But always makes the right read. I love his pick and roll passes. I think I was listening to stuff on him, and they said like he played in a system where not a lot of spacing around him, a lot of two big lineups, a
Hmm.
lot of big men in the paint. He had great success with, I forgot the pick and roll guy that I think he went to the Warriors, Trace Jackson Davis, I believe. Uh,
Oh man, I was hoping that he would
I
go
know.
undrafted so badly. The Warriors snagged him with like the second to last pick. I was hoping
57th
he would.
pick. Yep.
Yeah, we could grab him as an undrafted guy. But go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
No, no, no. Yeah, for sure. And like he had great, pick and roll chemistry with him. That's what I'm so excited to watch him in summer league because guys like that, to me, when they pick and roll guys,
Yeah.
those are guys that kind of flourish in that environment. Summer leagues are very chaotic. It's not very organized. Not a lot of there's not a lot of offense that's running that's very structured. So a lot of it's very pick and roll heavy base. Kind of read and react. That's why I'm excited to see him in that environment. But yeah, I love the pick again. Looks very mature. We'll talk about Maxwell here soon, but this looks like a guy who knows who he is. Like he's
Yes.
very comfortable in his own skin is the type of player I see him. Comfortable in the type of guy he is. He's not. I don't feel like he's gonna go out there and try to take 6 step back threes. Try like
Yes. I
I
agree.
so I've seen him compared a little bit to Talon, right? THT. and,
In
and
terms of like what, like his
like
pace,
in terms
like
of like a guy who needs the ball in his hands, who's going to a team that
okay.
probably won't give him the ball in terms of in that. I think the difference to me though, Talon feels a guy who's like we've had many conversations about THT, but a guy like
I
ones that
saw, as an aside, I saw somebody post a tweet. They're like, "Do the Lakers ever miss with their draft picks?" And somebody responded and said, "Well, they did miss with Taylor." And I was just like, I felt like responding to it. I was like, "We didn't miss with Taylor. Taylor just didn't want to do anything else other than score the
exactly.
ball." So it's a little bit different. But go ahead.
Well, no, also like Talon was sold as, hey, like you're our star, you're up next as the star, right? That's
Yeah,
kind of how he was molded. I can't blame Talon for like, all right, then give me the ball, like
yeah,
like
fair, yeah,
don't play me next to Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. But anyway, that's a side note. But Jalen looks like a guy that's very comfortable in his skin. You
yeah.
watch him play, he's very some qualities on him that some attributes that's been said is you can't rush him, you can't speed him up. And I think those are really great qualities for a guy who you're going to kind of pencil in as a really third string guard, hopefully backup point guard. I just love the control in this game, and he has to be able to shoot. I think he's a good guy that can like attack closeouts. You have to be able to shoot to do that. But
Mhm,
I'm excited, man. Throw him into our developmental system.
mhm.
Starting with the summer league, but looks like a fun player to build with.
Yeah, and I think the offensive side of his game will probably take a little bit longer to come along. But if
Sure.
we see impact, at least defensively, if he's helping crash the glass on long rebounds, if he's pushing the pace, getting the ball out of his hands quickly when it makes sense. Um, you know, like even with Austin, like that was one of the things that we used to talk about when it came to Austin. Like when he had the ball in his hands, you couldn't speed him up. Like he could
Hmm.
navigate a pick and roll and not get rushed because he was comfortable taking a mid-range floater or pull up or trying to be crafty or even do kickouts and stuff like that. So it's like I think there's a lot of in the NBA. There's a lot of like craze about guys that will just come in and start chucking threes at a high rate, and like everything's about like being explosive, athletically, explosive, offensively, like. But not everything needs to necessarily be that way. Like you watch a guy like
Right.
Nikola Jokic, he just plays basketball at whatever pace he feels like playing, and they just won a championship doing that. So, and LeBron is probably historically one of the masters at controlling pace, and he's never been sped up, in his career for like 99% of the time. And so like getting guys that are comfortable, with back pressure, getting guys that are comfortable with being in a congested lane and being able to make a
Yep.
read or get a shot off, like that's the kind of stuff we want. And so if that takes longer for him to get there, that's fine. I don't mind it. But some of his college tape looks really good. Like it doesn't look
Yeah.
like he's getting like wide open looks. Like usually when you see
Mm-mm.
highlights of him or when you see highlights of players, it's always like a bunch of wide open threes, a couple of cool ISO
Mm-hmm.
plays. And then you're like, okay, well, how much do I really get out of this? But you watch some of his highlights, he's in a congested lane you could see him
Exactly.
make the reads in some of those
Mm-hmm.
highlights. And it's like, oh, okay. So he has a nice process that he goes through when he does it. So I think, I think he's going to be good.
Yep. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if and I don't know if he's going to get like 20 minutes off rip, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gets into a game, is productive, and carves himself out a few minutes early on in the
Yeah.
role.
Yeah, it looks like he has every pass out of the pick and roll. It,
Yeah.
it looks like he's not just reading; he's manipulating. He has a lot of like he's looking one way and hitting bounce passes the other
Yeah.
way. Just like a really intelligent passer, and I think he has the size. Again, 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. Crazy. Maxwell Lewis also has a 6'10" wingspan. It just looks so long because he's so
Yeah.
skinny. But at least on paper. Jalen has the same. It was funny you brought up Austin, and I was thinking about this. So I don't know how much you've got to watch. We don't have to talk about him. I don't know how much you've got into look into Demoy Hodge. I don't know if you got to look.
I haven't. I
Okay.
would be. Yeah, I can't even
No,
fake it. I
no,
don't.
you
Yeah.
don't. You don't need to. But anyway, Demoy Hodge, just quick spark notes on him. Shot 7 threes a game at 42%, at 40%. But the reason he slid, he's 24 years old and he's 6'4", right?
Mm,
He's an undrafted guy that we got on our two-way. Okay, we gave him a two-way deal and he's undrafted. I don't think we contextualize how freaking absurd the Austin Reeves story is. Imagine if Demoy Hodge in 2 years is the third leading scorer on a conference final team. I
yeah.
was just thinking about that. I was like, damn, it's gonna be like it's a long shot for him to make the roster. Then I thought like, man, Austin Reeves was in the position like 2 seasons ago. So I thought,
Yeah.
that's just funny that like you can just I still don't think we contextualize that as much. But no, Jalen Hood, Shafino, I'm really, excited to watch him and he'll get the start. I think he's gonna be given the ball in summer league and say like, hey, let's see what you can do with the basketball in your hands at the 17th pick.
Yeah. So excited to see what he's doing. Obviously, I think we're gonna get another look at Max Christie, Cole Swider. We're gonna see what those guys also have to contribute to it. But the guy that the Lakers moved up to get, there was
Mm,
speculation that that first rounder was gonna get moved, so we may not have had Jalen on the roster or not. But the guy that it looks like the Lakers were going to go after, which is the guy that they traded up for and gave up that $4.5 million, was Maxwell Lewis, this kid out of Pepperdine, who Raj. This kid is absurd as a scorer. I'm saying like his size, he is attacking with either hand. I watched a highlight of him use a he crosses with his left foot over his right foot with a hard dribble right to get the defender to turn his body as if he's going that way, steps back and then crosses his dribble over to his left hand because the defender can't recover fast enough because the dude is so damn long himself, and he finishes it with a layup. And I was like, dude. And the crazy part about it is he does it in almost like a standstill motion. So you ever see
yeah.
like Phil Handy do those exercises where he's like, oh, this is what we call this cross. You step this way, jab this way,
Hmm.
go the other way. And I was like, bro, this kid is like 6'7" with a crazy wingspan. I was like, you don't see 6'7" guys making these sort of moves. He's getting low to the ground. His center of gravity looks amazing. And then obviously you pull his highlight reel, there's a bunch of dunks of him dunking on people and making a bunch of highlight dunks. But his offensive technical skill is so good that I will not be shocked that if he is the like talk of not just Lakers summer league, of
Mm.
the summer league coming up.
So before we get too much into like he's the
Yeah.
next one. So I got same. So we both have friends around the league, and I got
Yeah.
DMs like, "Oh, this guy's gonna be better than your 17th pick." I
Yeah.
was like, "All right, then what am I missing?" So I watch it. So I watch his tape. I'm like, "This is absurd." Like we just went 20 minutes on Jalen Hood Schifino. Really excited for him. I can place him right. I can like
Yeah.
backup point guard. I know what his role is. I know what he's thinking to be in the league. Whatever. I watch Maxwell Lewis. I'm like, I have no freaking clue. Like I literally have no idea where to place this dude. Looks like a Brandon Ingram with a step back three that shoots 40% on catch and shoot. Was
Yeah.
in like the nine. So Vinay, what did teams miss? What's the catch? I guess let me ask you that. What's like the catch with him?
So what
Why do you
I've
think he
heard,
fell? Why do you think he fell? Why do you
so
think
so
he
what
fell?
I've heard from folks who have played against him is that his IQ is a little rough, meaning that when he gets the ball in his hands, he has a little bit of tunnel vision, which if you harness that correctly, you can get a guy like Jordan Poole out of that. Obviously, they're different heights, but you see how the Warriors basically would play Jordan Poole in this role where they would say, okay, you're going to get the ball every single time we come down the floor. We're going to play four
Mhm.
guys that defend, and we're just going to let you be really, really great offensively. And, they won a championship that way. Um, I've heard that he has a little bit of tunnel vision offensively
Okay.
when it comes to it. And it's not that he can't make reads or that he's uncoachable. It's not nothing or he's like dumb and he doesn't understand what the coaches are telling him. It's just his natural proclivity, like his natural intent is to score. And that's okay because sometimes, if you put him in that role in the bench, if he ends up being like a bench guy, we can use something like that. Like the
Yeah.
Lakers last season desperately needed a wing size guy to be able to score, and we didn't have that until we got Rui. And once Rui came in, he literally exploded onto the scene. Game one puts up 29 against the Grizzlies in a win for the Lakers in the playoffs. So I think that's the catch that I've heard on Maxwell. I haven't seen tape on his defense, so I'm gonna have to take a look at it. There might be some issues there, but he can score, dude. He can score in bunches, and he can do it in a lot of Raj. He's hitting like post up fadeaway.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it turns over the wrong shoulder. Like is like, all right, dude. We don't have a guy that can score like this on our roster right now. So
but see that's where I like wings have been put on the pedestal for the last 2 years. Everyone wants a 6'8" scoring wing, right? That's like what everybody would like. Like, can you handle, shoot? And if you've got I feel like if you've got the length, like I feel like that's a guy you take. It's just weird. I watch him like this dude. I don't follow college basketball, so I have no real like able to speak on it, in a strong capacity. I'm like, man, there's 39 better prospects that that went ahead of him. So and he was pretty high on I see some people's boards. Yeah, like that's why I give the Ingram comp, just because like he looks like a guy that is figuring out his body in terms of like what he can do. Like he's so long, I don't think he knows it yet. Like I see him in transition, and like he'll take 2 steps and he's at the basket. There's one play I saw from him where like he caught it in the corner, he pump faked, and he dribbled like once, and like he had like 2 long strides and he reversed it. I'm like, dude, this dude looks freaking insane. And then all the step back moves, the isolation moves, those just look unreal. And you said he's gonna be the talk of summer league. He's another guy again. I feel like these type of dudes really flourish in that environment. Long, gonna be super athletic, can get there in transition, all those step back threes. I think he shot like 40% on his catch and shoots. I think he shot like 30 something in total. That was not a good Pepperdine team either, right? I believe.
Yeah.
That was like a terrible team where he was the one guy who can go get a basket. So I think like that kind of maybe blinded teams, but no, he looks insane. I love the pictures of like I think it was Joey Buss there in like February scouting him, which is really cool. It looks like a guy that they've had their eye on. But what do you like, what's his, because he's obviously not going to be doing the step backs and stuff for the Lakers next year. Like that's not, I don't think that's his role. But I mean, if he's like in the 90 percentile in terms of catch and shoot guys, that's a guy you can play right away. The defense, you're right, we have to kind of see how that looks, but I feel like he has all the tools. At least like looks like he's long, has the 6'10" wingspan, very lanky, a guy that probably I think he's put on some strength as well. But what's his NBA, like we just placed Jalen Hood in terms of defensive guard that can run some pick and roll. What is Maxwell to you?
I mean, early on he might just be like a very aggressive scoring wing. Like I'm trying to think of a scoring wing, like a guy that just comes in and scores constantly every time he plays, but that's wing size, right? So when you think of like scorers, you think of guys like Jordan Clarkson and that type of guys, but he's bigger than that. Like he's not, and the way he attacks is not like the way like Jordan Clarkson attacks, but he does some stuff in ISO that I'll be like, all right, right. I'm sorry. Like, let me just say this, dude. Like I have like, I can count, people can't see this. I mean, if you're watching the video recording afterwards, like on the YouTube, you'll see it. I count on my hands like less than 10 people I trust when it comes to college, like watching college players. And these are people who breathe basketball. Like,
right.
And these, like, I would say like 8 out of 10 of them, like they swear this kid should have gotten the lottery. And I'm like, bro, why didn't he go? He's like, he just has to work some stuff out. And, teams aren't ready to do that with him. Like in college teams, they don't have time to do it with him. And so like, that's why I'm saying like, if he comes in and he has a really good summer league, offensively, because that's really what it is. You and I have been to summer leagues before. Those summer league games are very unstructured. Like, so if you just go in looking to score and you can do it and you look good doing it, like you'll be, like you'll make a name for yourself. So if he goes in and he does that and let's say he has a good training camp with the Lakers, like, could he potentially be like a scoring wing that just happens to, that just happens to emerge not organically? Maybe Braun misses a couple games for rest or something like that. So he gets like a nice 10, 12 minutes. Like, who knows? Like, we just saw that happen with Lonnie Walker. Like, Lonnie Walker was a guy that people thought was going to be out of the league. The Lakers start him and he turns into a 15 points per game, on the offensive end, like score. And people are like, "What the hell? Like, where did this come from? Where was this the whole time?" So, I think I think Joey and Jesse, they kind of know what they're looking at when they see, and it fits the archetype, right? Like we
Sure.
grab Christie, great defensive technical player. We have Austin. Austin's like a fabulous offensive player. It feels like we did the same thing. Jalen is a fantastic defensively, technically sound player, and this kid Maxwell looks like he could just score in bunches, and it seems to make sense what they try to look for with him.
Yeah, I love that they went. I know you're saying he can contribute now, but I love that they went with like high upside too. Like
Yeah.
I love that. People are like, no, you need to go with a 4-year guy. I'm like, that 4-year guy might not make the rotation next year. I mean, you might not, but I love that they went with a guy that they believe in. And again, the talent just looks absurd. You just brought up all of that. What made me think, what that made me think about was like Kuzma's rookie year, where like
Yeah.
Kuz was a guy that walked into the league and could score. Like obviously we think about it. Well, I mean, he's now like a 20-point a game scorer on bad efficiency, obviously. But I mean, that rookie year was a magical scoring year for him. He was hitting from three, was able to hit from the outside, and made his name in summer league. Like his summer league propelled him to the preseason where he did well, and then he became the 17-point a game his rookie year. Obviously, built off of that. But like, I'm interested to see if Maxwell can do that again. Like, I have a tough time placing him. I just watch him. I'm like, this dude looks like a star, like not a star,
Yeah.
but like a guy that like that's the kind of archetype that I would put for guys in terms of that kind of that build, that kind of skill, just super coordinated, right? Like you usually don't see guys that tall who are
Yeah,
that coordinated.
that tall is Raj. He doesn't stand upright. Like when he attacks
No.
dudes, like one of the things that I love to watch about, especially because the league is becoming so wing oriented, is guys that are above 6'6", 6'7". Do they get low when they attack you?
Right.
Right. Like this. I remember you and I both watched like Kobe. Like Kobe wouldn't beat guys off the hip, like off the strength of his first step. Right. Like he was a 6'6" guy. It's not like he had a crazy. When he was younger, he had a crazy first step. But as he got older, he didn't. But Kobe always played the angles. Like he always got you with the angles. And I'm not saying this kid is like that, but he attacks people like that. He's not beating you just with a first step, right? He's not like a Russell Westbrook, John Wall, Scoot Henderson first step that's just going to blow by you. Like he has to do stuff to get you out of position and then score on you. And he does that, and then he gets low. He explodes out of those movements, like you said. He knows when to use the long strides. He knows how to use his I'm very fascinated to see what kind of camp he has, what kind of summer league he has.
No, for sure. He has a crazy snatchback dribble. Like you watch his tape,
Nasty snatchback.
just disgusting snatchback dribble, and like those guys don't expect that from a guy where like, because like he gets low, but the ball still has to bounce, right? Like quite a while because he's just like he's so tall. But like you watch him and like he has a crazy hang dribble. I'm not sure if we're thinking of the exact same play, but you just mentioned that one where like he drove and kind of stopped around the free throw line. But like that's one that really stuck out to me as well, where I forgot, he was like attacking isolation, spin left or like spin right, hang in the air and finish with the right hand. Like those are stuff that you don't see at 20 years old. So just looks like a absurd talent. And again, like the snatchbacks, the step back, he has like behind the back and transitions that he uses, just all kinds of stuff. And another tidbit, I was listening to Rafael Barlow, who's a awesome draft dude, who's been making the rounds. He said his workout was like the craziest he's seen, and he said the workout was so good that this is direct from Barlow. He's like, the workout was so good, his agent told Barlow, send me that video because I'm gonna send it to teams. But that's how good he was, and like I think he gained a few pounds. He was like 195 or something, I think, coming out, and I think now he's in like the 200s. Just absurd, again, talent. Not trying to put the weight of the world on him, but again, I watch him, I'm like, what's the catch? Where's the like, oh, he does this terribly, or oh, he has a propensity to do this. And the ball hogging, like that's something that you definitely want to clean up. The defensive stuff, you definitely want to clean up, but I think you throw that in a winning environment and you kind of take your chances. So I'm surprised that a lot of teams really let him go.
Yeah, you think about it. Like I'm not saying we should run this lineup, but if he can show some of if his scoring does technically, for the most part, guys that are offensively sound scorers, like they have offensive skill, they do translate into the NBA when they're put into specific roles, right? Like It's not one of those things that like it's the guys that are like high motor rebounders. Like the high motor rebounding part does translate into the NBA because that's a role that people need to play that needs to be played for teams. So having having offensive skill, having offensive scoring ability, shooting, that sort of stuff all matters. That helps translate. But like, could I see a situation where like the Lakers at the end of a game or at some point in a game, if the lead is big enough, they give him minutes next to like Max Christie and Jalen, and
Yeah.
now all of a sudden this kid's being surrounded by a bunch of defensive guys, and they're playing up and down basketball, and now he's trying to get easy looks. Like that's what happened with Kuz. Like there was no expectation on Kuz like that. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what we were gonna get, and he ate off of Lonzo Ball's passing. Like Lonzo was
Mm-hmm.
setting him up over and over again because
Yep.
Lonzo wasn't looking to score. He was just looking to set up his guys and create advantages for him. And Kuz ate off of that. And you can see like how a guy like Jalen, if that's his mentality, I'm just going to attack to create and then play defense. Like you can see how that sort of stuff may translate for something like him. Lonzo is an incredible passer. Like his IQ is
Yeah.
super high, so it's hard to replicate that. But sometimes it's just a matter of looking at what that guy is really, really good at and what he's not good at, and then surrounding him with the guys that want to, that fit around, naturally complement what he wants to do. So
Yeah.
I'm fascinated. I'm very fascinated to see how good
Yeah.
he looks.
Yeah, last thing I had on him was again, you don't see a lot of this because he's a guy that had the ball a lot in his hands, but there were like a lot of plays where he'd screen and pop, and I feel like he
Mm-hmm.
looks very comfortable with that. And usually don't get the full package of like has crazy handle, has a crazy crossover game, and like the step back looks clean, like the jumper form looks clean,
Yeah.
like all those combinations you usually don't get those in one player. That's why it just like his jumper looks like a guy that thinks he's a jump shooter. Like he doesn't
Yeah.
look like he takes shots just because he's open. He's taking like contested like step backs. I talked about there was one against UCLA against Jaime Vasquez, I believe, where like he drives right, crosses back, and Vasquez is like still in his wind, and he's like just pulling up from like a three, and it just looks ridiculously clean. He has some other ones where like he pump fakes and shoots, and again, all these actions that just look smooth for a guy that can kind of operate off the ball. So I'm really interested to pair him kind of with Jalen Hood and see if they can like have a nice pairing in summer league, along with Max as well. Max, by the way, training with Drew Hanlon, I think that was dope. Hanlon is
That's
not
good.
a guy that Hanlon doesn't hand out workouts like they're
Yeah.
free. He's very I think he's very particular with who he gives workouts to. Not saying he obviously if an all-star calls him, he's gonna take their call, but
Yeah.
usually with like guys, he's very particular. So it's cool to see Max work out with him. But yeah, man, Maxwell looks dope.
Matt, he looks like somebody who's going to like one of the first things that you and I are probably going to be like, oh wow, he really reads closeouts really well. Like that's like the first
Mm,
thing people are probably going to say about him. Like when the ball gets swung to him, he like knows whether to attack or whether to to shoot it. Based on what he sees. I remember that was like a thing with Austin. I was like every time Austin gets a ball, as the ball swinging around, he almost like always makes the
yep.
correct decision every single time, and that's like an underrated IQ thing, like how
Mm-hmm.
you decide to attack that closeout. Max, because he's so gifted, he looks like he's very gifted or skilled offensively. Might be one of those guys who's like that, who when he
Yep.
gets the ball in his hands, he's just making the correct play. It may just come down to does he make the correct. He makes the correct reads, but what does he do after that? Is he just looking just to score, or is he looking to do more, a little bit more than that once he creates the advantage that he wants? So, yeah, man, you and I are both gonna be in summer league. I can't wait to see that kid play.
Yep.
I think he's gonna be much better than that 40th pick allows, and everybody I've talked to has said he should have gone in the first round. So I'm there has to be something that's wrong with it. So you and I are both saying the same thing. There's got to be something there that he doesn't do well, which is why he didn't go in the first round, or as high as people are projecting him to. Maybe it's because of the school that he went to. People didn't go out and scout him like that. That's also a thing too as well. But as Laker fans, we're gonna root for his success and his highlights, so we can take over summer league yet again for another year, gassing up
Yep.
our guys over everybody else's.
Yeah. And that's why it was so cool. It feels like, Joey and Jesse and the whole scouting department. Why again, I was so adamant, like, when I want to keep these draft picks, and I
Yes.
feel like I got my wish. Like if they're terrible, don't blame me. But I'm really excited to have so because my other reasoning on this, like I feel like the scouting might be the best part of what we do,
Bro, we're getting
like as
okay.
a whole.
Let's be honest. We're getting impact guys. Like Austin Reeves is an impact guy. We our
Sure.
most impactful basketball player last season was somebody that Joey and Jesse found. It wasn't somebody that came in free agency, and it wasn't somebody that like we traded for. Like honestly. So like at this point, I remember I was talking to my brother about this. Sorry, not to cut you off. Like
No, you're good.
we have to start respecting the fact that these dudes are bringing in impact players. And I get it. I get the fans that want to trade the picks because they want to go all in. But it's like, dude, we're drafting impact guys now too. The same way we could sign impact guys off the street.
Yeah, and look, so I think first, like I brought up the Demoy Hodge story. I think Austin Reeves is such a bar that like it that's so unprecedented, right? That's an unprecedented thing that it's it like that's not that should not be your expectation, right? Like
Sure.
you shouldn't go in to be like, hey, Jalen Hood should be dominating year two. That's not really it's not usual how it works.
Yeah.
But I do like my point why I was so adamant was because I think the draft part is the best thing we do. It's
Yeah.
like it's obviously something that those guys are extremely passionate about. It's also something you can't throw away, right? Like it's not something that you can pay to go like you can just trade you could trade picks and all that. It's why I'm trying to keep these as much as we can because I think it's the best thing that we do as an organization. I'd like to give these guys more chances and see if they can find you get all these undrafted or late second round picks. Just get them some guys up in the early round. Just look at the league. It's filtered with guys that they've chosen or found or kind of brought up through our system. And I'm not sure if these guys will be ready in day one. I still think the whole context needs to be around they're going to be on a good team, hopefully, right? Like, so I think I just found out I'm muted on Spaces, maybe.
Oh shoot, were you? Oh yeah, you are muted on Spaces.
Oh,
Hopefully,
okay.
yeah. I don't know how long
Oh,
you were muted on Spaces. I apologize for the Space listeners. I don't know how long you were muted for, but no, yeah. So like as we were saying, like well, I only got the message 20 seconds ago that you were muted, so it might not have been too much.
okay. Yeah.
But yeah, no, like we are getting impact guys. I agree with you. It's not something that we can ignore. Like if these guys end up being, and it doesn't start with just Reeves, right? Like Caruso was also like he actually contributed to a championship, winning a championship in LA. And obviously Reeves helps us get to the Western Conference Finals. So it's like we're also reaching a point where I can actually turn around. If it happens again, Raj, if it
Yeah.
happens again, I can make the argument that we draft more impact players than the persons that are in charge of. I know who they are. The people who are in charge of making the trades to bring in the players that we're supposed to bring in. That
Right.
should tell you something about, because I don't believe it's the same people, or I don't want to say I don't believe. I know it's not the same. Like when it's the draft, I think Joey and Jesse are the lead guys who lead that project. When it comes to
Right.
making, I'm going to trade Malik Beasley for this guy or this guy or this guy. I think that's a different team within the organization or a different leader within the organization that makes that decision. Still collaborative, just the head guy is a little bit different. And I can make an argument that Joey and Jesse are finding better impact guys or equally impactful guys as the other dudes are,
Yeah.
the other folks are. And that should tell you something about how good they've been so far.
100%. I think I didn't know that if you get a phone call, it mutes the Twitter space. So I think
Oh, okay.
that's what happened. So apologies for that. But no, what I was saying when I was muted was, I think you were talking about Austin Reeves previously. I think that's a tough bar to reach. That expectation is really tough. That should not be where you set your expectations on. But the reason I was so adamant on picking the picks is because I believe as an organization, it's the best thing they do. I think this is the elite skill of our organization is drafting, and obviously pulling stars as well is 100% part of that. But I think like this is what also guys that are up there are passionate about as well. You see them in the war room. I mentioned it earlier. I love the photos of like Jesse Buss at a Pepperdine game in February. Scouting, going out and scouting there, doing the work. That was the how do I say it? The things that Magic Johnson wasn't doing, right? Let's just
fair.
put it to that. He was not going out and scouting college basketball players, and then he was drafting Mo Wagner. Anyway, but like it's nice to have.
I was gonna say I thought we were gonna draft like if somebody else had been in charge of doing our draft, I would be like, yeah, we're probably gonna draft some Michigan guy. And then I saw there's a kid that because I haven't watched him, but that Kobe Buffkin kid, I think he's from Michigan. I was like, oh, his name is Kobe and he plays for Michigan. We're probably going to draft him for sure. I don't
Oh
know
man,
anything
a
about him,
lot,
but we're probably going to draft him.
a lot of people wanted him.
Yeah.
Also
But he's a
strange
good,
that
yeah, he's
Atlanta,
apparently a good player. So
also,
no offense to him
also
at all.
like Atlanta took another guard, which is at at their high
Yeah,
pick, which doesn't make any sense. No, that's not for this conversation. But yeah, I also think that the whole context around these players should be that they're joining a good team, right? They should be,
absolutely.
in theory, they're joining a team that's good, that has deep players. As much as we're gonna crucify the players that didn't play well in the conference finals, they're still NBA guys. If they're back on the team, they're ahead of these players in the rotation. That's all should
Absolutely.
be
Yeah.
something to be mindful of. But that doesn't mean you can't be excited about these guys, because I think we both are. And I think the scouting department has earned a benefit of the doubt, to where even guys like me or even other guys I see people leaning my way is like, hey, yeah, you could trade him for another player, but like maybe you get a cost controlled player, that
Yeah.
those are very valuable in this new CBA. And maybe you hit on one of these. Maybe you get a 17th pick that hits a little higher than you would. And I said this before as well, a guy maybe they have as on their lottery talent board, right? We don't know their board. I don't know exactly who was up there. I'm sure they like some guys that went before them, but it's just exciting, man, to have young talent, an infusion of young talent. After the AD trade, we kind of traded a lot of those pieces where it was tough to kind of bring in young, cheap talent. We also traded that away in other avenues, or let them walk. It's nice to kind of have a replenishment of that. You have Max Christie, you have the two guys we just drafted, obviously Austin Reeves, you have Rui Hachimura, who's not young, super young, but in his like mid-20s. It's just nice to have a replenishment of young, youthful guys that I think help in the regular season, and then have a chance to contribute in winning situations.
Yeah. So we talked about Jalen, we talked about Maxwell, we talked about
Hmm.
you mentioned Demoy Hodge, him attempting 7 threes a game and being a defensive player, and I think he shot like near 40% or 40% from
Right.
three on significantly high volume. There is one guy that is left that we should give, because we do have
Oh
some time
yes.
left, that we should discuss. The other two-way player that we signed, Colin
Hmm.
Castleton out of Florida, who also shares the same agent
Yep.
as Austin Reeves. He's a big, I think 6'11". Is he a true 7-footer? I'm not sure, but
I'll look
he's
that
a
up while
big,
you're
yeah,
talking.
6'11", 7-footer. We signed him to a
6'11.
two-way. A lot of folks that, again, neither you and I watch college that deeply, so I asked for the cliff notes. The people I
Hmm.
trust say he's a mobile big. He's not like a heavy-footed big. He moves. He can pass the ball out of the post. He can pass the ball from above the three-point line. So I'm glad to see that. I don't know what's going to happen with him. What kind of rim defender he's going to be, how he gets used. But he does sound like a modern big. Like, one of the things that you and I have talked about over and over again
Hmm.
is, what is the next paradigm shift in the NBA? Like, what is the thing that everybody's going to do? And obviously, everybody's looking at Nikola Jokic after winning a championship and thinking, oh, I got
Hmm.
to find that guy. But those guys they don't grow on trees. They're extremely hard to find, and they don't
Sure.
exist. Like, there's a reason why he is who he is.
Yep.
But there are things you can extract from it. And one of the things that I think you and I both discuss is, if you're going to draft a big in the modern NBA, that big has to be able to move his feet defensively and offensively, meaning he has to be mobile. He can't be a heavy-footed guy, and he has to be able to move the ball. Can't be somebody who just stands around waiting for a guard to run up to him to set up the DHO. Has to be somebody who will dribble the ball, move the ball around the floor. We see guys like Mason Plumlee do that for the Clippers. You've seen plenty of, even DeAndre Ayton does that to some degree for the Phoenix Suns. You want a mobile guy, and that's what the Lakers want to go get. They want to go get a big dude who can pass. I think he can shoot, and he can move the ball, and he's a mobile big. So I'm glad to see that. It's good to see them go in that
Yep.
direction. He's got some heavy shoes to fill. He does have Austin Reeves' as agent, so unfairly, I
Again,
think some of our fans
yeah,
are going
that
to be looking at
that's
him
so
as like,
unfair, dude.
yeah,
Well,
and but I think he said that he turned down some opportunities to get
oh
drafted
yeah,
in the second round, so he
yeah.
could have this opportunity. So I'm fascinated to see what comes out of it.
Yep. Shout out Aaron Riley, who's Austin Reeves' agent, and obviously
Yeah,
sharing the agent with here. When you build a bridge, it's either to kind of walk across. So I'm sure
yeah,
that conversation was a little bit more smooth this year. Yeah, I'm excited to see. I'm not gonna pretend like I've gone deep into his film. I've been kind of stuck on the two guys we drafted, but looks like a guy I've seen comps to like Marc Gasol. Obviously, those are 1% kind of if he
yeah.
reaches those, but I think that's kind of the attribute, right? Kind of a playmaking center. Kind of reminds me a little bit when I watch like kind of Zubac, where that
Fair.
maybe we got our next J Huff, who knows? But
The
that's
legend of
unfair.
JL.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, Legend J Huff, who's strangely in Washington now, which is interesting.
yeah,
I believe so. Shout out. I hope J Huff's doing well. But yeah, like it feels like he's another kind of playmaking big. I don't think he's like a shooting big, but he's a legit 6'11". I think he can rim protect a bit, and again another exciting guy to watch. Obviously Austin worked out. We'll see how he goes. Again, it's an unfair comp to put on him, but I think he is older as well. If I,
yeah.
if I remember correctly, so hopefully a guy that people when they say older, I think like he just automatically just has more experience. But when I think about it, Vinay, I think about they have their NBA body, right? Really,
Yes,
like that to
I
me,
agree.
that's where is really the important part. Maybe the game is a little bit more advanced in terms of how much experience they have, but having an NBA body, especially at the center spot, I think is really important. Like Dallas just drafted with Derek Lively, like who they're expecting to come in and be their rim
Right.
protector from day one. I think it's really tough to get like a 19-year-old to come in and be like, hey, you know, stop LeBron James from driving to the basket. Like going from
But
like college basketball to now.
you know what? One of the things that's kind of helpful is when we
Mm,
grab these sort of guys that are much more experienced because they've been in college for
yeah,
longer. They know. I feel like those players know. It was the thing with Kuzma too, right? Like, because Kuzma was a tenured college player at the same time. Like we used to see, we saw the contrast between Kuz and Brandon Ingram, and I'm pretty sure if you pulled up tweets from Laker fans at the time during their rookie seasons in the NBA, a lot of Laker fans are like, "Well, Kuzma is our future, not Brandon Ingram." But that was
mm,
a test of Kuzma having those seasons in a college season versus
yep,
Ingram being a 19-year-old one and done player or whatever it was at the time. So I think the point I'm trying to make is a guy like Colin, same way with like a guy like Austin, he knows what he is. There's no
good
confusion
point.
about what he's good. He knows what he's good at and what he's not good at. And it's easy to drop some of those guys compared to like maybe a Maxwell Lewis. Like you drop them into a role and be like, "Yo, I need you to do this off the bench for us," and he can just go do it because
Yeah,
that's what he's done his whole career. He already knows what his strengths are. He doesn't really play too much outside of his game unless he has to. So could be an impact guy. Could be a guy
yep,
that could save us, get us some minutes, serious minutes.
yeah,
Definitely going to
and
be a guy that I pay attention to in the summer league.
100%. I just loved our so we went on him. Just like the draft went exactly kind of how I wanted in terms of a theory. Like I was really hopeful we went upside. A lot of people, yeah, draft a 4-year player. Like I get that. I totally get the thinking behind it. I just
Yeah,
love we went with the upside in the draft and then went with like in the undrafted pool. We went with guys who are older, who have their body. Like you kind of hit on those guys that are
yeah,
overlooked, right? They drop in the draft due to their age, you know what I mean, or their, the fact that they're already older and their upside isn't as high.
yeah,
I love that we went with that. Like if you look at the Warriors, right? Totally, they went straight with the more experienced guys in the draft,
yeah,
and they obviously the trading of Jordan and Poole was a mentality shift from a franchise perspective. I just love that we were able to get those guys, and I think Vinay, we gave out those 2 ways really quick. Like that was a
yeah.
really quick. Like last year, that's not what happened. I believe if I remember correctly, we waited until I believe summer league before we handed out the 2 ways to Swider
Scotty,
and yeah,
is it
Scotty
Scotty? It was
Barnes.
Scotty, right?
It was Scotty, yeah, no, well, not Barnes, sorry, Scottie Pippen Jr.
Yeah.
Cole Swider, by the way, still has a 2 way. Very
So
I
I
feel
think
like
in the new CBA we have three now, right?
yes, you have 3. Yes, yes,
Okay.
yes. I think I'm the last one on the Cole Swider ship, but everyone else has sailed away. I've
I
still still
you
rowing.
and I attended a game. You and I attended a
Yes.
summer league game
Mhm.
during the season out here in Ontario, and
South
we were
yeah,
just
South Bay. Mhm.
South Bay. We watched a South Bay game. We were watching them play. We watched Christie play. Said the same thing. Christie looks
Mhm.
great. The
Mhm.
reads, decision making. The only thing that Cole Swider has, I mean, obviously he has to knock down some shots when he actually gets minutes. That's one thing. But the
Yep.
only thing like one of the biggest knocks on him, which you can tell right away, is he's not a good defense player. He doesn't even have like his feet
No.
are bad defensively. He's kind of running around like he's very confused. So hopefully he's worked on those sort of things. Obviously we've talked about the four guys that we've got this season, but I would love to see Max Christie make a name for himself. I
Yeah.
would love to see Cole Swider come out, and tell Max Lewis, no, this is not your turn. It's still my turn to make a name for it. Like there was a lot of buzz over Cole Swider last time we were in summer league. People, every time he shot the ball, like everybody was like, "Oh shit, this guy's gonna get hot. Is he gonna get hot?" And we love to see those guys now that they've kind of had their opportunity to experience the pressure of wearing that Laker jersey to see if they can break through in their sophomore years.
We forget, like I remember Darvin Ham after like game 4 of the preseason. It was absolute tire fire of a season to begin, but he's like, I'm gonna go with my real rotation in this preseason game 5 it was, I believe, right? And I remember I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna watch very attentively like what our rotation. Cole Swider was like the second guy off the bench, just like, oh man. I was
can't trust that coach, man.
Oh man, we're in trouble. And then I think Cole Swider got hurt, and then Matt Ryan took his place, and we know the Matt Ryan story. I guess we can close on this. I want to ask you this because I think everyone has a different theory on this. I have my thoughts, but I'm gonna get yours first. Max Christie, year 2 summer league, right? Do you put stock, I guess, or what? Better question. What do you put stock in to a second? Because I think first year summer league, it's very tough, right? Hit or miss. You see extremely great lottery Hall of Fame players struggle in their first summer league, or you see guys play well. There's a wide range of spectrums. I think the second year there's a pretty narrow kind of like once you've gone through a rigid NBA season, once you've seen NBA level defense, I do think there's a year 2 expectation at least, right?
Fair.
What do you put stock into for year 2? Let's make it specific with Max Christie, right? Our second year guy. I don't really put Cole Swider into this because he got zero NBA experience really, although he was in NBA practices, so maybe that counts. But Max Christie got real game tape minutes, whatever. How much stock do you put into a second year summer league experience, if any?
Yeah, I honestly, the stock that I would put into it, let me separate the word out or separate the thought process out. I don't put a ton of stock in it because I don't know what the Lakers are going to run, right? Obviously, Miles Simon is gone. Like, I don't know what they're going to be doing, if they're just going to be letting them play or whatever. What I do want to see out of Max Christie when he has minutes is that he's not deferential to his teammates when he doesn't need to be deferential to his teammates. There should be an attitude, I think. There's that story about how Talen Horton-Tucker was telling players like, oh, I shouldn't be here. Like this, I'm too good to be in these situations. Yes. Like I need to see that out of Talen was a little ahead of himself when he said that, but like with Max, I want him to have that attitude. Like, okay, that's cool. We got these rookies, but I have this one-on-one that I'm just going to take it and I'm going to score on this guy. Or, I'm gonna bully this dude to the rim, or whatever. I'm gonna take this shot with confidence. Like he has a very nice mid-range pull-up. He's shown that he can use an escape dribble below the 3-point line to get himself open looks. Again, he's long arms, very athletic, very like rangy, very crafty. Like the way he moves his body offensively and defensively. Like I want to see the confidence. Like, if there's one thing that we know. Like you can see confidence in a player, like when it clicks for them, when they're like, oh, this is easy now. Like I want to see that with Max, and I want to see that confidence in his ability. That's really what I want to see out of him.
Yeah, for sure. I remember. So the guy I kind of compare this to that I want to see. Obviously, Josh Hart was a 4-year or 3-year college player. I forgot what it was, but he was a multi-year. But I remember that second year Josh Hart, and Josh Hart again didn't get a lot of on-ball reps and stuff like that. Remember, you could see like, oh, like the game is slow. Like I can really manipulate the defense. I can get to my spot. If my shot's not going, I can get to the line, right? I know what I know what contact is called. If that makes sense, right?
Yes,
in an NBA kind of scenario. And I want to see that from Max as well. I think he has more than the capacity to do that. I feel like he has enough off the ball, off the dribble bounce and creation abilities that I think he should be able to have a really good summer league. I'm not looking at it from a stats perspective, but I think the confidence part that you just put it is correct. He can really get to his spots. He should be able to be really comfortable. Should not have to be rushed. There should be no defense that really gets to him, especially in summer league environment. Obviously, I think like they're going to give the ball to Hood Schifino and have him create. But I think
Yeah.
Max can more than, in more than enough possessions, call his own number. I'm clearing this side and getting to my spot. Stuff like that like he can't do in the league
Yeah.
yet. But I feel like summer league's the right place for him to really hone all those. And then obviously the catch and shoot, opportunities are going to be there. He should just be in a better condition than anyone else. Like he looks like he's in incredible shape, at least from the photos. Looks in, absolute great condition. Now I'm expecting a big summer league for him. So, yeah, man, should be exciting.
Yeah, man. We're looking forward to it. Obviously, if you
Yep.
guys have been following us in the spaces, like me and Roger have already said that we're going to be there first weekend. We're going to be out there in summer league. We're going to be locked in for that 8 o'clock game on July 7th. We'll be in the building, hopefully
Yes.
with some good seats, because I expect a bunch of Laker fans to be there anyways. The summer league continues
Mm-hmm.
to grow in popularity. A lot of people go. It is actually an amazing time. You just see players walking around like in the arena and
Mm-hmm.
around Vegas and stuff like that. If you do any of this stuff, gambling or whatever, if you go out on the strip for anything for. So we're looking forward to it. Raj, this was an excellent episode. We covered
Yep.
a ton of stuff as always. And it's always wonderful. It's always enjoyable to do this. So as always, this will be up on your podcast feeds tomorrow. We will have the video up on YouTube. If for anybody who comes in late wants to hear the recording again. But as always, we want to thank all the folks that are in the spaces. If you don't subscribe to the YouTube, we are partners with the YouTube program. Not doing anything with it yet, but if you subscribe
Yep.
to it, you'll be notified when we start doing like member only sort of live streams. And Raj and I are brainstorming a ton of stuff for next season to do that can help make the game enjoyable the way we like to talk about the game, unfiltered and
Yep.
just candidly and away from the drama and the theatrics that you normally get. But as always, we appreciate all the folks that are tuning in with us here late Saturday night to talk about the draft picks and Lakers basketball afterwards. We hope you have a great weekend whenever you're listening to this, and you guys just have a wonderful time. And we'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy.
Peace.